going on, everyone? It's your guy, Cole Jackson, back with another episode of the WTFlock Postgame Show. We're going to be giving you a not so instant, we're talking next day, but it's an analysis and a breakdown of yesterday, I guess we can say. We're recording at night, but yesterday's 16-13 win for the Baltimore Ravens over the Chicago Bears at Soldier Field. Another, same story every week. It's another nail biter right down to the wire. But an exciting game and an interesting game, and we're looking forward to getting into it. I'd like to thank the sponsors of the WTFlock Postgame Show. It's our guys and gals over at Lee's Pint and Shell, located right in the heart of Baltimore. It's your go-to for game day with their game day specials, Bud Light drafts, Michelob Ultra buckets, Modelo and Corona Ponies buckets, and White Claw buckets. They got something for everyone. We'll drop the information down below. Be sure to check them out. And my post-game co-host, Adam Bonacorsi. What the flock is going on, my guy?
Last time we talked, Cole, I was down in the dumps fighting the Ronas. I'm feeling great now. Family's rebounding nicely. It is good to be back. Good to get a Ravens win yesterday. I'm trying to get the verbiage right here for when we record to when we release. So yes, we'll say yesterday, as weird as that feels. Nice way to get this thing rolling again after the Thursday night debacle last week for sure. Despite the shorthandedness of this game.
Yeah, and let's start there because this was, I owe a $50 donation to some guy I've never met on Twitter because I was so sure that Lamar Jackson was going to play. So let's go back. Lamar Jackson out Wednesday, mysterious illness. This has happened a few times earlier this year. I thought nothing of it. I'm like, okay, he's got a stomach flu, whatever. He'll be back tomorrow. Thursday hits, still not practicing. Okay, hit the panic button. Then we've learned all about, the norovirus, and I'm Googling and, checking in with our medical friends on Twitter. And then you're hearing about the Louisville team, and he picked it up in Louisville, and they had guys sick. And I'm like, what is going on? And then Friday comes around, he's back at practice. So I'm like, okay, whatever, it's fine. We're good to go. Then he travels with the team. So I'm like, I'm doubling down on this. I'm making firm commitments. I'm shelling out charity donations. And Lamar Jackson wasn't good enough to play. What were your expectations going in with Tyler Huntley? Like, be honest.
So we can go back to preseason, and I got to stand out there at camp and watch a lot of Huntley. And I've always been a Huntley over McSorley guy to begin with, so I already have a built-in bias. And I've said that I love his deep ball. I think he has the best overall deep ball on the team, right? And I won't step off of that. I think it's just a very clean ball. It was overthrown it a bit today, but I didn't have a lot of expectations. I thought there was going to be a lot of ground and pound. I thought they were going to utilize a lot of the short passing game, which we saw in stretches. It seemed to disappear at sometimes. But, it's a collective effort on the offense. So you really needed that line to help you out there for an second-year undrafted rookie quarterback, and he wasn't necessarily getting that help. But he was making a lot of errant throws early on. So I think I was cautiously optimistic. The game started, and I got a lot more cautious and a lot less optimistic. and then he settled down, and then I settled down, and my tweets absolutely did not settle down. But that's okay. That's okay. Where were you on that one with Huntley once you saw he was starting?
Yeah, I was a little. I think what made me the most worried is anytime you're getting a backup quarterback in there, it's going to be a toss up. You need a guy that's going to come in and manage the game. The reality is, there's not 32 starting quality quarterbacks in the NFL alone, let alone enough for teams to have quality backups. I think Tyler Huntley is one of the better backup quarterbacks, and I think what gives him a huge leg up is he fits the scheme perfectly.
Absolutely.
Lamar Jackson pointed him out himself. He's got, that type of skill set that Lamar has. So, you see it sometimes when, there were games where Flacco came out and Tyrod Taylor would go in, and they're just so different. And I remember I had Gordon McGinnis on, our buddy from PFF, to do the quarterback preview, and he made a comment that stood out to me, and it's kind of stayed with me. If you have a more pocket passing quarterback and you bring in a backup that's a mobile guy, it can be a real adjustment for the defense because they're not game planning for that. They're game planning for, a pocket guy. And then you bring in a guy that can move around, get loose, scramble. And so sometimes having mobile backup quarterbacks can be an advantage because at least they can make something happen with their legs. What surprised me though was they didn't really try to use Tyler Huntley's legs all that much.
No.
They use some option concepts. They use the counter bash. So it's not that they didn't use it at all, but I guess I was expecting a heavy option game, and that wasn't necessarily the case, or at least the defense, stuck to Huntley and tried to force the handoff if we turn around and we see a lot of options. So it was kind of interesting in that regard. But I was expecting. I thought they would give them a game because the Bears are beat up on defense. Like, they just lost Mac. They had just lost Hicks before the game. Those are two big blows to that line. But yet they're, what I needed was our offensive line to really give Huntley a chance. And unfortunately, that was up and down all game. And let's just jump right into the offense, actually.
Yeah.
Let's start with the offensive line. Patrick McCarry comes back. He had probably one of the toughest games I've seen from him in his entire career. And you can just see that he's struggling with his mobility. Everyone always asks, how does he make it work with his short arms? How does he make it work? And this is why scouting, guys, is so important. You can't just look at a measurement and make a judgment. He uses advanced hand placement, like some of the best hand placement you can study. He has very little margin for error when he hits his punch in pass protection. He does it one of the best. He also is really good at getting to a set point to set up his ability to use his hands. He gets guys square, hits his hands, rep over. That's how he's been having success this year.
Okay.
When you take away that guy's mobility, that's a damn tough hill for him to climb. And that's kind of what happened. He got beat regularly. He had a tough game. Villanueva had another tough game. He couldn't deal with the Quinn's speed rush. Huntley was hung out to dry there quite a few times. And what really surprised me with Huntley is, despite that, his ability to kind of hang in the pocket and not get jumpy really stood out to me. And that's what I want to see from my backup quarterback as the game goes on. Isn't that they're coming in and lighting the world on fire. What I need them to do is progress throughout the game. And Tyler Huntley did that. And that's why he had success today, in my opinion. He got better as the game went on. He settled in. He got more confident, but then he started making some throws. He had that overthrow to Mark Andrews, but then on his next, 5 to Mark Andrews, a lot more on target. He did have some low balls. The interception was, a pretty poorly placed low ball, but overall, and I mean, his accuracy wasn't perfect. That's one of his things he needs to work on, but he got better as that game went on. He got more confident. He was getting the ball out quick. He was hitting guys with good timing. I think he did everything you could ask for a backup quarterback, especially in the conditions that the offensive line put him in.
No, I absolutely agree with you. And there's something to be said about his composure, to your point. When the, Villanueva was and by all means, not my jam, but it looked like Villanueva wasn't necessarily getting beat right out of the gates. It was almost that second rush coming at him, and he just couldn't, lacked lateral mobility, I guess. He just could not keep up with his guy on the edge. And so he's got McCarry getting backed into him from one side. He's got Villanueva losing his guy on the other side. And there's really nowhere for him to necessarily go forward each time. Because, look, we talk about Huntley having mobility, but he's 60% of Lamar on a bad day for Lamar, right? And that's still great for most quarterbacks in terms of mobility, but he's not the escape artist. He's not Houdini like we have in Lamar Jackson, so we can't expect that of him. But the fact that this pocket kept collapsing on him to the tune of 6 sacks on the day, and he was able to keep his composure. He wasn't hearing footsteps and taking a false step or trying to take off running when it wasn't necessarily there. But he also wasn't necessarily holding it entirely too long and taking bad sacks from that angle. It was more just a quick collapse more often than not. I think he had one in there that he held it for quite some time and called a coverage sack, if you will. But for the most part, I think, he wasn't, there was no Sam Darnold ghosts. I
Yeah.
guess probably the best way to put it for him in his first start out there. And that was good to see. It was definitely good to see, hitting what the defense gave him more and more later in the game. And you're right. There was I think he had another low throw to Bateman right before halftime. So he had a couple shorties and a couple overthrows early, some jitters, I'm sure, but overall I was pleased with what he was able to put out there.
Absolutely, and he dealt with a couple drops. I mean, I thought a guy like Sammy Watkins played a lot better this week than he did last week. He looked a little healthier. I think he only had 3 catches, but he made one huge catch. So I mean, that's obviously set up the touchdown. So that's important. I thought Bateman looked good. Seeing him make guys miss is awesome. Andrews, I guess up and down game. I know people are pretty upset about the interception target. I mean, he caught 8 of 10 targets. Is that ball supposed to be thrown that low? Do these kind of deflections keep happening with Mark Andrews? I don't know. You
It
could
was a
feel how
funky
you.
rollover, though. It was the way the hand got it. I mean, you watch the replay. The hand
Yeah.
got in there from the defender. It knocked the ball out, and he was ready to bring that thing in. And as he rolled over, the ball rolled over with him. It was just dumb luck. I mean, to ask him to have the wherewithal to swat that thing down to the turf at that point in time whilst rolling, it's a lot to ask. But you're right. 8 out of 10, that ball was one of the 2 incompletions, and then the overthrow in the beginning.
Yeah.
That's it, right? Otherwise, he was very steady, making great sliding
Safety
throws.
blanket. Tight end is a backup quarterback. Tight ends are safety blanket. Someone you can go to. So when it's Mark Andrews that you're going to, you feel pretty good about it. And hey, he's a pretty good looking guy too.
Oh, you know what? Real quick, one more note too, and we are talking about the backup quarterback situation before we jump. There's also something to be said about knowing you're starting for a week versus finding out, as you leave the bus, coming into the stadium, which is what happened with Huntley allegedly. And when you hear Lamar was so out of it, he didn't even know they landed. I can't remember if it was Huntley who said that or Marlowe or somebody had mentioned that post game, but there's something to be said about getting off that bus, fully expecting to be the backup quarterback and only to be told, by the way, you're starting. So, kudos to Huntley for being able to step in quickly too, on the fly. Really no preparation, or at least mental preparation, to expect as much. So
absolutely. And before we get into the rest of the offense, anything going on next Sunday? Any big events going on? Getting ready for Sunday Night Football?
there's some stuff. So obviously, this week is Thanksgiving. Thursday. Oh, I'm sorry, American Thanksgiving.
Not for me.
U.S.-based Thanksgiving for us down here. So, I will say that if you're around town, big drinking night in Baltimore, obviously, the night before Thanksgiving. So if you're around town Wednesday, down in Baltimore, down in Canton, make sure you stop by Lee's for their Rumplesgiving $2 Rumple Mints. Definitely worth your time. But if you like going by Lee's on Wednesday, maybe stop by again on Sunday prior to the game, where we're doing a redo of the Pints and pregame, we'll call it. So obviously, we had to cancel the last event due to health issues. Now we're able to re-up this thing, and I'm looking forward to it, right? I was very much looking forward to last time. Very bummed that I wasn't able to do this last time. We're going to go ahead and start about 2 hours before kickoff on Sunday night, prior to the Ravens-Browns Sunday Night Football game. And then we're going to kind of roll through it, right? Where are the Ravens right now? State of the team, health. We'll see what that looks like this week. And then a quick game preview ahead of time. And, stay tuned, I guess, to the social platforms for us and for the guys at least Pint and Shell to see more updates on that and who we'll have out there joining me.
Absolutely love it. Yeah, it's going to be a blast. Shame I can't be there. Can't get back into my own country without a test until December 1st. So the dates didn't line up despite the policy change. Very unfortunate, but yet here we are. I'm still targeting hopefully a playoff game. I want a home playoff game. Get my butt down to Baltimore.
Absolutely, we're all hoping for it.
Yeah, and so let's finish out the offense with the running backs. I thought they played pretty well. I was shocked. I thought Murray ran pretty well. I thought Freeman ran pretty well. Overall, I think that if that's your duo, I think they have a big enough varying skill set to kind of get it done. It goes back to something we've talked about. Block them for 5, they'll get you 5. They can execute their assignment. They're not gonna, miss any any gaps necessarily. But they do need good blocking, and so I think they got some of that today. I thought the line actually had some good run blocking plays.
Oh yeah.
They got into a stretch, I think, in the second quarter where I don't know what the Bears did. I'm going to have to go back and really focus on it when I get into the film, but they did something to really adjust to their run game, and they had nowhere to go. And then, the Ravens used the quick passing game, and that kind of loosened them up, and then they were able to run it effectively again. And that was kind of the story of the second half. Once they got going, they got into the run, quick pass, run, quick pass, that vibe. So I thought that was really good to see. Seeing Freeman and Murray run so hard is what I want to see at this point. That was kind of what got me frustrated with, a Le'Veon Bell. There was some tentative runs. We've seen it from Tyson Williams, especially after the catch, just some tentative runs. So, run hard, do your best. They're not going to be the guys that are going to go out there, blaze, make guys miss, though Freeman had some pretty good plays today. Freeman's been the one that shocked me the most. I think he's really settled into the scheme. Murray's coming back from an injury, so you got to give him a little bit of time. But that one dive he had, I think he went for 8 yards, but he dragged 3 defenders with him. So if he can be that inside kind of hammer in the Gus Edwards role, and Freeman can kind of be your speedy, shifty guy in the J.K. Dobbins role. I mean, we're dealing with plan Bs here, but it's looking okay. It's looking okay though. I'll give it to them. I got to give them props for the improvement, the way they've kind of blended in with the scheme, the way they've learned, picked up the playbook, avoiding the mental mistakes. I think it's really important, and so I think those two deserve a ton of credit.
No, I agree, and kind of to your point, when the season started and we knew what the group looked like, at least at that moment, at that moment in time, it was hard to expect them to step right into this offense and just do it, right? Like, it took a while to get here, but they're learning the system, they're learning their fit, they're learning, their assignments, and it's starting to show up. And if you look at the raw stats, just the overall number, you see 3.1, 3.2 per carry. It doesn't look fantastic. But I think you're right. There was a stretch in that game where they were getting stonewalled, getting dropped for a loss, barely making it back to the line of scrimmage. And that kind of skews that number. You go back into the second half, though, and even with the Ravens playing down in the fourth quarter, and they're still running the ball and doing it effectively, taking off 4 or 5, almost 4 to 5 at a time, should I say, and with ease. And it was necessary in this game, right? And I think it played a huge part in that big gap in time of possession in this game, because it wasn't even close. I mean, if you looked at strictly time of possession and didn't even look at the raw stats, you would think the score would be a lot different than it is. But hold on, I got to pull this real quick because it was pretty glaring, right? It was, basically 40 to 20. I mean, 38 and change to 21. So
right.
That was a pretty big gap there, but it had a lot to do with that ground game and the effectiveness and not steering away from it when it wasn't working, in the end of the second half or towards the end of the first half there. So I'm content with it. Like, this is the duo we have. I don't see them trying to add a third into the mix. Obviously, Tyson Williams isn't going to be there for them. It doesn't look like McCrary's coming up anytime soon. Right now, those two are just insurance policies. And, with that said, I don't even think Bell's maybe back to the practice squad if he wants to, but I don't necessarily see a need to do so right now. Again, barring whatever necessity may come down the line, hopefully, knock on wood, hopefully no injuries, but
right.
That's where it would be something where you look back into him at this point. But yeah, I'm happy with this tandem being what they are. And I feel like we'll probably see a pretty even split going down the stretch here, the second half of the season. Make sure nobody, you can't put too much wear and tear on those legs, a little long in the tooth for a running back. So hopefully these guys will continue to do well and continue to thrive here.
Absolutely. Well said. And let's round out the offense with one thing that I'm highlighting. There was absolutely nothing wrong with that fullback screen. I actually love the play call because, we've seen it in games. We've seen where Patrick Ricard can take over a drive, and people are always like, how? Like, why is he so open? He barely gets covered in those check down flats. So now you get him in a screen with 2 blockers in front of him, and for the first time since Ray Rice, they actually had blockers set up for a running back screen. I don't know. I can't figure it out. But if you guys say that that's a bad play call, you're just literally looking to blame Roman for everything. It was the perfect play call.
It was a
He
good
was
play call.
wide open. He had his blocker set up. That goes for 20 if the pass is on the mark. Plain and simple. You can still say Greg Roman's a terrible offensive coordinator, but that play call was well done. You're allowed to do that. Don't worry. No one's going to come for you. They might actually, but they're fake tough guys on Twitter. Don't worry about it. So let's get into the defense, because I was pretty hard on the defense. I said the defense sucked. Some people took exception with that. I just want to throw this out there going into this game. They are the 8th worst defense in yards allowed per game. They are the 2nd worst passing defense for yards allowed per game. And then when you look at points, they're middle of the pack,
Turnovers, bottom 5.
Like, I don't think it's absurd to say that this defense isn't good. Now, I like nuancing these conversations, because people kind of throw out their thoughts and then you can kind of see two ways of looking at this. If you say the defense could be better if they could make their tackles and they could clean up the communications errors, I agree. I think what you can say from that then is that this defense is not playing well, and so they suck, but they have the potential to be a lot better and get better quickly. I actually agree with that, because I don't think I don't think they just have a bunch of guys on their team that forgot how to tackle. I think this tackling issue is a symptom of a couple of things, and we've talked about it before. I think it's guys trying to do too much. I think it's guys overthinking, guys playing slow, bad angles, diagnosing plays poorly. A lot of that can get fixed on a week-to-week basis. Look at Patrick Queen. He hasn't missed a tackle in 5 weeks. And he's playing a lot faster. He's playing a lot better. So can Brandon Stevens do that? We saw Tybo today. Tybo had a bunch of missed tackles earlier in the year. He's cleaned that up. Yeah. So I think, really it was the angle from Brandon Stevens on the screenplay. He makes that tackle, we're in a much different, but that's how many times can we say, if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, then wouldn't it be a Merry Christmas? Like, that's it. I'm sick of saying if we're in week 11 here, folks. Like, at some point you just are who you are. So do they have the potential to get a lot better quickly? Absolutely. Are they playing well right now? No. Statistically, no. Eye test, no. Like, I'm sorry, the defense is not playing well right now, and I don't give a crap that they only gave up 13 points. Justin Fields missed like 4 open receivers running downfield. Like, come on, it's clear as day out there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so you pointed out Bowser, right? It should have 2-sack day. Should have been a 3-sack day for him. So that's kind of what I look at, right? So let's start with the missed tackle thing. Because we saw more of them again today. We saw more Ravens taking out Ravens on those screen plays or these, quick plays down the sideline that are trying to develop. And who was it today? Was it Chuck Clark taking out a guy? So, like, you see, like, these things are just kind of falling apart. So here's my thing. A unit can play totally undisciplined. And if that happens on any given week, I'm like, you know what? You chalk it up to a bad week, right? Things weren't falling in place. When it's consistent every single week and the entire unit is missing tackles and they're not playing disciplined football and it's consistent, that becomes a bigger problem. If you see a guy like Bowser turn it around, there's one guy, right? One guy's got it figured out. All right, cool. Somebody's starting to get it figured out. So I'm hoping that that's going to be like that snowball right now. All right, let's see if all the other parts and pieces start to come together, because it does seem like a lot of hero ball, kind of to that point you were saying. Guys overcommitting, guys overthinking it. It's hero ball to me. There's something said the other day about, is Marlon Humphrey really trying to play hero ball, trying to make the big play instead of trying to make a play? And last year, yeah, he made a lot of the big plays with the strips and his punches. This year, he's nowhere close to that type of player. But is that psychosomatic now? Is it in his head? Is he overthinking these things? So I feel like the first, I guess, domino needs to fall in order for them to get back to that point. It's not going to just suddenly snap and this defense has figured it out and turned around and they're playing clean, disciplined ball next week. I think it's something where we need to see the first domino, maybe Bowser again, cleaning it up. And again, I go back, should have been 3 sacks today. That third, I would have been his second one in the middle of the game. They're getting negated by penalty, which was a huge sack too. But Right, there's one guy, right? He's getting it figured out. Odafe away starting to look a little better again. Like he's all right. I hit that rookie wall. I'm starting to come back around on the other side of this thing. I'm hoping all the pieces start to figure it out, but I think it's going to be a slow process to get there. I don't think it's going to be a week 12. It's going to be a by week 14. Now they look like the defense we would expect. It'll be when Averett comes back because clearly Chris Westry is not the answer. Although I will caveat, he looked like he kind of like Macari is not fully back to health, but they really had no other options but to throw these guys in the mix.
Yeah, no doubt that made an impact. I know people are all over Westry, and I mean, he had a bad game.
I said to fire him into the start. I'm his biggest supporter.
He had a pretty bad game last week. So, I mean, it is. He's working back from an injury, young player. All that needs to be factored in. The other thing that we need to talk about is Wink Martindale, because I was pissed at Wink Martindale today.
0?
Now, you guys know me. I'm usually on the side of the coordinators. I usually look for ways to the point that I get called an apologist for, why. Basically, I want to know is why is a coordinator calling a certain play call? I did it last week with Greg Roman. Then you see guys like Brett Coleman come out, drop their film videos, and specifically say, "Here's the plays that they called to beat the defense." I mean, they were all there. I talked about them. Just no one wants to believe me because everyone just wants to yell at Greg Roman. Anyway,
that was a nice breakdown he did too.
Greg Roman's not here anymore, or we're not worrying about Greg Roman this week. He was fine, I guess. But Wink Martindale. Now, I tweeted it earlier. I said, I will not blame the coordinator for missed tackles and bad angles. I won't. I think that's execution. So then it's like, okay, well, what will you blame the coordinator for? Well, if you guys are getting toasted on the back end, maybe don't go zero blitz on 4th down. It's really, that's the fine line for me. I just want to look at what actually happened and understand why it happened. So the question was they had the big play to Mooney on a screen, which was a missed tackle, execution issue. I counted 3 times where Westry got beat and the play wasn't allowed. One of them was that circus catch that Mooney made at the sideline, and he was just out of bounds. And he was beat cold. And then there were 2 others that were just, one was underthrown and one was overthrown.
The overthrow was the play right before the touchdown, or 2 right before the touchdown?
I think it was 2 before the touchdown. And this is what I'm talking about. So those plays, those lapses may not show up on the scoreboard. They may not show up in your advanced stats. That's why you have to watch the film. So I haven't watched all the film. Film's not out yet. But it is clear as day Chris Westry needed some help on the back end. So in a high leverage moment like 4th down, where do you think Andy Dalton's eyes are going as soon as that ball snapped? I'm going to the guy that's getting toasted all day. I'm giving that guy help. I said it in the Raiders game. I said specifically, Wink is who he is. He's an aggressive coordinator. He's going to call these aggressive blitzes. You live and you die with your style. He basically live and die by the sword. If he's going to use blitzes, that's his style. He can't chicken shit away from his style, right? Now, that may have been true in week 1. So the question is, okay, well, why are you kind of off that now? Well, a lot's happened in the last 10 weeks. In week 1, you don't know what you have on the back end in live games. We didn't know that Averett was going to actually turn out to be pretty darn solid. We didn't know that Humphrey was going to have games where he struggled. We didn't know that Westry was going to return from an injury and struggle. So as the weeks have gone on, I think we've seen a lot less of this consistent empty blitz backfield. And that's probably a symptom of him not being able to rely on his guys like he could when it was Humphrey and Peters and Smith and, of the past defenses.
Right.
So today, I think that was a mistake. I put that on Wink Martindale. That's what I'm talking about, guys. I don't just try and defend the coordinator to defend the coordinator. I look at what happened and try and understand why it happened. That is what I think happened today. I think it was an error in judgment to not give them that help on the back end. I think that's why that 4th down happened. Plain and simple. That
makes a ton of sense. I mean, I'd love to have something to add to that. That's on the money. I think you said it all there. I had a few discussions today, kind of in the same vein, where there's a lot of finger pointing at, and I do it too, so I'm guilty. When you're in the live action of a game and you start finger pointing and say, this is on the player. I know, Cole, we talked real quick about, it was just a kind of a brief comment. I immediately, I think it was a 4th down play. And I want to say it was Mooney they left wide open. in my view, right? Hey, what the hell? How did Mooney end up so wide open there? And you're like, well, hold on, take a step back and look. It was a rub. And then my view was totally different. I saw two defenders suck in, but you go back and look. It's like, okay, it wasn't. And you overreact and you kind of just pick, and you're like, that's the problem. And sometimes you have to take it back, step back and look at it and try to figure out exactly what it is that's going on before you can start to make an assessment like that. But more to your point on Wink, overall I had no problem with the game plan, but there were certain plays like that where it was just a head scratcher. It's like, I get why he does it because it's what he does, but in that instance, no way in hell should he have done that. That was asking for trouble. And I mean, you watch Westry that whole game, he was playing not to his usual speed. So to leave him on an island like that and expect anything different was damn foolish of him.
Absolutely. Well said. And so I guess the question is, because we're moving into a stretch and we're moving on, and we got what are you expecting? I mean, this is the thing. I say it every year, and your record doesn't lie. You are what your record says you are. You can be the best 7-3 team in football, or sorry, you can be the worst 7-3 football team in football, or you can be the best 3-7 team in football. It does not matter. You are what your record says you are. We've seen what happens when teams just get into the postseason. They can be like the 2012 Baltimore Ravens, where whatever the hell that came out of the gate was not what went into it. Get in, and anything can happen. And the contrast is the 2019 Baltimore Ravens. We all thought we were going to walk all over the Titans, and we didn't. We ran through that season. We were running teams, steamrolling teams, and we were in great form. And then playoffs comes, and what happens. And so the reality is, you are what your record says you are. Ravens are 7-3. They control their destiny, specifically for the winning the AFC North, because that's all we seem to play over the next 2 months. I mean, they got what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 games left, and 5 are against the AFC North with Packers and Rams mixed in there. 5 games coming up. You go 3-2, 4-1. You're probably winning the North. But then the games that you're shuffling in there are the Rams and Packers that are 2 top NFC teams. So it's no cakewalk. What are the expectations?
So it's interesting, right? So I look at the AFC North, and it's weird this year, but they're still divisional opponents. Like it's going to be a dogfight every game. I don't expect the next time they face the Bengals to end up the same way as it was the first time they played the Bengals. Win or lose, it doesn't matter. I don't expect it to be that wide of a margin. I expect every one of those games to be these nail biters. Now you look at that and say, all right, the Ravens have proven this year that they're always on the right side of these nail biters, right? They find their way through these situations and find a way to come out on top, be it a Tyler Huntley game-winning drive or a Justin Tucker 67-yard field goal, whatever it may be. They're finding different ways to win those knockdown, drag-out type fights. That's good, right? To see that type of ability, adversity, blah, 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 blah. That being said, it is going to be huge this year more than any year to me about health and what this team looks like. Because right now, as of this game, they were without one position player of key value in every single unit, sans tight end, right? Quarterback, wide receiver, running back, offensive line, and then every unit on the defense. You were missing somebody who mattered. They're not all coming back, but getting Lamar back helps. Hollywood Brown back helps. And you can go through that whole thing. Dalen Hayes, even in some capacity, could help you guys, So that's going to be a big difference maker. But at the end of the day, I don't see any of these AFC North teams really run away right now. I mean, so Pittsburgh, as we're recording, Pittsburgh's still down 7 to the Chargers. That puts them at 5-4-1 if they were to lose this game. They're in the fourth quarter right now. But Cleveland barely eked one out against the Tim Boyle-led, Lions today. So I don't think anybody's a true runaway in this division. I think it's going to be a dogfight. Now you got Aaron Rodgers, with Green Bay talking about how bad his freaking toe is. He said it's far worse than any turf toe he's ever had. So I don't think they're, again, I guess kind of wrapping that all up is I don't have this glowing expectation the Ravens going 7-0 to close this thing out. I think there's an absolute legitimate reason for them to be in every single one of those games. And I think that the way this team has handled these tough stretches, these tight games, these fourth quarter overtime type games, I think that will go in their favor later in the season for sure.
Well said. Well said. And that's what the Ravens need to do is one game at a time and just don't look ahead. It's right now it's Browns week. We got to go beat the Browns. That's all you can do. Browns get a bye week and then they come back and take on the Ravens again. That to play your opponent that close together when you have a full week of that's a tough draw for the Ravens.
And they get the bye in between too.
That's what I'm saying. Like they get to rest up and have to spend a week preparing for that game, whereas the Ravens have to get ready to play the Steelers while they're resting. That second winning Sunday is going to be huge. I'm glad that game's at the bank. I almost would say I'll go as far as saying to win the division, Sunday is a must win. Doesn't mean it's a must win for the season. Doesn't mean it's a must win to make the playoffs. To win the division, I think that game in Cleveland off their bye week, how can you have high expectations going into that game? Like, I'm just being real with you. They're going to be a week healthier. They're going to be a week preparing for you. I mean, it's coming off a bye week is always an advantage. Being at home is an advantage. Yeah, that's a tough ass game. So I think that's Sunday. If you want to really pace the division without having to hope for a bunch of other stuff to happen to go your way, you got to go out there and you got to beat the Browns. I'll go as far as saying that.
Yeah, do you want this hobbled version of Baker Mayfield, or do you want him another week rested coming off a bye? Right now,
I'll take him anyway because Baker Mayfield sucks. But I hear what you're saying. But they're going to have Kareem Hunt back for one of those games. They're going to have probably for the second game off the bye. They're going to have Tyler Conklin back. So to your point, obviously getting a week healthy, getting that extra week of rest where those rehabbing guys that are kind of coming off their IR are going to factor in there too. So that's all I'm saying. Take it week by week. Don't look too far ahead. And of course, we'll be here live right after the game to break it all down for you. That's all we have for you today. Be good to yourselves out there. Be good to each other. Peace out.